Hi, Sandra here. I'm often asked if it's okay to give apple cider vinegar to dogs, and I'm going to say yes, I really do think it is. I think it's quite beneficial. Apple cider vinegar, as long as you're buying the a brand that's raw, unpasteurized, that has all that murky stuff floating around in it, the mother, as it's called, which tells you that that apple cider vinegar has not been tampered with. It's just raw and natural and is fermented, which is important. So I'm going to tell you a little story about that. I do think that raw apple cider vinegar is beneficial because, well, for a number of reasons. Certainly it's good for any dog that has any kind of gut issue. Diarrhea, anything like that. And it will also add a little bit of stomach acid, because apple cider vinegar is acid. It will increase the stomach pH to make it a little bit more acidic, which is always good for dogs because they require a more acid stomach to break down their food, the proteins and minerals and stuff in their food. And I've found over the years too that apple cider vinegar can be helpful with any dog that has a yeast infection. So there's the probiotic benefit, which offers beneficial bacteria to the gut and microbiome, and a little bit of increase in the stomach acid pH level. And good for dogs that have, well, any kind of gut issue, but especially yeast infections. But I want to tell you a little story as it pertains to coyotes, because I think this kind of proves the point. We used to live in the country. We lived in the country for 11 years, and so we were surrounded by coyotes because coyotes are everywhere. And we had a fairly large property there, 10 acres, and down at the end of our property, the road made a sharp turn, and I'd be walking my dogs down that way every day, and there was a little seasonal stream that ran through that particular corner where the road turned. And every morning I'd be walking down there with my dogs, and I would see that the coyotes had, well, they seemed to use it for their own personal bathroom. So there'd be 2 or 3 or 4 little, coyote poops on the road there. And so, well, it's just me, but that was a good opportunity for me to examine the coyote poop because I wanted to know what they were eating and what was coming out the other end. So I would notice all kinds of things, of course. I would notice that, some bones in the poop and fur in the poop. And in the summer, I might notice some little berries and stuff that I guess they'd managed to scrounge from the ground. But in the fall, in the autumn, there was at the end of that, right at the end of the road there where our property ended, there was an old abandoned. There had been an orchard, an apple orchard at one time, and, a lot of the trees were still there. They were still bearing fruit, but the fruit wasn't, good for my purposes. It was, well, the apples were sour and they were kind of wormy and stuff. But what I did notice every autumn, when the apples were falling from the trees, that the coyotes would be eating those rotten apples, the ones that fell on the ground. And also, at that time of year, because there were so many rotten apples on the ground there, well, you could smell it. You could absolutely smell that strong fermenting apple smell, not unlike, well, apple cider or apple cider vinegar. You could certainly smell it. It was unique. You knew it was rotting apples. But those coyotes used to eat those apples, and so consequently, I'd often see, well, the remnants of the apples in their poop, because, well, dogs don't digest plant material of any kind very, very well at all. But they were certainly eating those apples, even though they were, pooping out most of it. Because those apples were rotten and, the coyotes were eating them from the ground, they were absolutely obtaining the same benefit that giving your dogs apple cider vinegar, raw apple cider vinegar, they would get the same benefit. Those were rotten apples on the ground, so they were fermenting. They were getting the beneficial bacteria from the rotting fruit, and they were eating them, that's for sure. They probably didn't know what they were doing. They were just scrounging for food. But having said that, they were certainly getting the benefit of those that natural rotting, fermenting process that Mother Nature provides to animals in the wild. So yes, the answer to the question is I absolutely do support apple cider vinegar, raw, unpasteurized apple cider vinegar for dogs. For any dog, but especially the ones that have maybe some gut issues going on. It's very, very helpful. They don't need very much, like a quarter of a teaspoon, a half a teaspoon, maybe once a day, in their food or in their water. It's amazing too that dogs, even though apple cider vinegar is very lip puckery, it makes you kind of cringe when you put it in your mouth because it's strong. Dogs just seem to be very accepting of it, Anytime I give apple cider vinegar to my dogs in their food, well, they just eat it, drink it, along with the food. They don't seem to have a problem with it. So give that a whirl, if your dog is experiencing some gut issues, because I think it's helpful over time. It's not going to fix the problem overnight, but as things do over time, you can help your dog by doing some of these things that are a natural way of helping the body get what it needs from food. Okay, so remember, not very much though. You don't need to overload your dog, so start with a quarter teaspoon, maybe once a day, or I don't know, even a few times a week, and see what you notice over time. Okay, hope that answers the question.